Well, we want to go to Ottawa now, where we're joined by Canada's Minister of Foreign Affairs, François-Philippe Champagne. We'll talk about Canada's response to the coronavirus outbreak. Minister Champagne, thank you very much for joining us. What should Canadians understand about the coronavirus outbreak, its at least limited arrival in Canada, and what the government is doing to combat the fallout?
Well, thank you, Paul, for having me. Obviously, the risk is low in Canada, but as you've seen, the virus spreading to about 40 countries now. So what we're saying, the March break is coming. Families, people are watching us. I would say three things. I would say first, read before you're going. Read out about the latest information we have on our website. I would say the second thing, registered with the website of the Government of Canada, because you saw in Japan, that's the way we can offer personalized consular services should something happen. And finally would be reach out. If you find a situation where you need our assistance, reach out to us. And that information, I'd say, Paul, is all on the passport. On the last page of the passport, people can find the website, the phone number to call. I think I would say it's just common sense as the virus is spreading in many areas. And if you've seen, it's going very quickly. We saw in Italy, for example, in Sicily, in Tuscany. We saw a hotel in Tenerife. The quarantine laws are applied very quickly in some places. So my advice would be for those and families who think about going, take a moment. Just take a moment to watch where you want to go, what you intend to do. Are you intend to go in public spaces? Are you visiting family? And make sure you register, because if something happened, that's the only way we can reach out and make sure we can help you.
If somebody registers, they will be contacted by email by the government if conditions warrant that? Is that how that contact takes place?
Well, we have different ways. You saw in Japan, we have about 50 people in hospitals, and we had 1,400 contacts pretty much. So sometimes it's done by email, sometimes it's done by phone if we have the contact details. And it's a very dynamic situation. So depending on the circumstances, we will adapt, and we want to provide the most updated information. But I think it's prudent at this time. As this is spreading, you said the number of cases now around the world is north of 80,000. We have said that people should avoid all travel to Hubei province and all non-essential travel, for example, in China. But as you see in South Korea, in Italy, things are moving quickly. So the best advice would be take a moment to reflect and think whether that's what you want to do for the spring break or the March break, and decide where you want to go, or alternatively, make sure you register so we can reach you in case of need.
What about travel to the U.S.? Does the government have any advisory on travel to the U.S., where the Center for Disease Control, as you know, has had a pretty blunt message for U.S. residents in the past couple of days, telling them to expect the coronavirus to arrive and spread in a much larger way?
Well, I think it's safe to travel to the United States. Let's look. I mean, we have about the latest information I have is about 15 cases in a very large country with hundreds of millions of population. So it's about like in Canada. There's a very low risk in the United States and Canada because we have very resilient healthcare facilities. We put all the systems in place. We have been working with the Center for Disease Control from day one. So I would say travel within North America is safe and the risk is low. What I'm most concerned about is when you look at places where we've seen, like in Iran, Italy, which has a number of cases, which is growing. And, this is dynamic. Maybe today we'll find there's another hotspot in the world where people have been infected. So the best thing or the best advice, stay aware of all the relevant information in the destination you want to go, and also adapt perhaps what you want to do. You may have seen in Italy, they've decided that big major sport events will not be taking place to make sure we protect people. Now it's all about protection, common sense, and making sure that we can ensure the health and safety of Canadians, whether they stay here in Canada, in North America, or around the world.
Most of what we've talked about thus far has pertained to individuals and the choices they make with their families on travel. What's the government's advice to institutions? And I realize some of these are provincial jurisdictions, but things like school boards, things like universities, things like the owners of major sports facilities in Canada. Does the government have any guidance for institutions in Canada who often deal with the public?
Well, indeed, the Public Health Agency of Canada is in touch with local official, provincial official, territorial officials, and the advice will be tailored in light of the situation. Like I said, we're fortunate that the risk is low in Canada. So therefore, it's more common sense, normal type of advice you see with respect to flu and influenza, where people need to wash their hands and make sure that they don't come in contact with people if they have any symptoms. But on the other end, I would say that the primary concern we have so far now is really people traveling abroad, because we've seen, for example, in the case of Japan or South Korea and Italy, that you had an outburst of people infected. But I would say North America so far, thanks to the efforts that were put from the very beginning, the coordination between the United States and Canada, we have been able to keep the risk low. But that means we still need to remain vigilant because this is a virus that is spreading. We've seen in other areas. But so far, the authorities are in contact with the institutions you've been referring. And I would say the website also contains a lot of information. Some of it is common sense. Some of it would be tailored in light of the risk that may be associated with a particular location in Canada or in North America.
And last question, Minister, has the government got to the point yet where it's considering how perhaps to support the Canadian economy if there's a meaningful economic shock in Canada from the virus situation?
Well, for the time being, what we've been seeing is the potential disruption on the supply chain. This has a lot of impacts worldwide. For the time being, I know my colleague, Minister Morneau, was at the G20 recently. This was obviously talked among finance minister. There's the G7 coming in Pittsburgh of foreign ministers, which I'm sure that's going to be one of the main topics on the agenda. So everyone is looking at what the coronavirus may do to the global supply chain. Because obviously we know that things might be imported, exported in different parts of the world. We all recognize there'll be an impact, but I think it's too soon to tell what that impact might be exactly.
Minister, thank you very much for joining us today on a very important topic. That's Foreign Affairs Minister François-Philippe Champagne, speaking, of course, from Ottawa.